evening, Oakland and beyond. Hope everybody is doing well out there on a Friday night in Oaktown, the East Bay and beyond. It is show number 2 of what has been a doubleheader broadcast here today on twitch.tv/AsFANRAdio, and it is, of course, the flagship podcast for this Twitch channel. Let's go ahead and get show number 203 of your number one source for everything and anything on your Oakland athletics underway. And, of course, if you did miss it, yes, it is a spring training edition of AsFANRAdio because, hey, the lockout is over. We'll get into details about that, some of the details of the unfortunate crap that we knew that was going to bestow our beloved baseball team once that lockout came to an end. And, of course, everything else we have on tap here for the next 2 hours or so here on your number one source for everything and anything on your Oakland athletics. What's going on, everybody? It is the Legally 5150 Corporal Oaktown. I was originally expecting and planning to be joined by the main man, the boss man, tonight, but he is a last-minute cancellation as he has some stuff going on his end that's taking precedence this evening, pretty much an evening with the boss wife and the boss daughter and the rest of the boss family over there at the boss pad in Alameda. So take care, boss. You enjoy the rest of your night. I will do as best as I can, obviously, to carry the load, I guess, tonight here on this edition of the show solo. So it'll be the second time today during a broadcast that I will be one-manning said broadcast throughout the course of the day. As always, thank you all for tuning in. Obviously, a week later than planned with this show, which originally had been planned to be a St. Patrick's Day edition of AFR. But that was, of course, back when we thought that potentially the lockout was still going to be going on. Who knew when the hell any sort of MLB baseball was going to start up? And it really basically looked like the lockout was going to drag on for a while, and the only baseball we were going to have was going to be minor league baseball, local college baseball, and, high school ball and whatever the hell else baseball you wanted to go and check out. But obviously that won't be the case. We actually will have some spring training action. We'll be recapping before the night is over with. Obviously, of course, checking in on what happened as far as what the CBA looks like. The inevitable blow-up of the roster that we all unfortunately knew was coming once that CBA came to an end. Obviously, of course, we do have some stuff on the Howard Terminal front to touch bases on what's gone down since our last show with that, and obviously other stuff that has to come ahead of that, and a whole bunch of other shindigs and whatnots that we will be discussing over the course of tonight's broadcast as we mosey on along. Tonight, of course, though, we wanted to start off, of course, with some tragic, unfortunate news that, of course, hit the world little over a week or so ago. In fact, it was prior to when the show was originally scheduled, and, of course, tonight's broadcast is dedicated to this individual. Of course, as a little over a week plus ago, the news all hit us that, unfortunately, the great wrestler known as Scott Hall, many of you, of course, would be familiar with him as his time as Razor Ramon during his early time with the WWF, passed away following complications from a hip surgery that he had. Sounds like, apparently, from what I remember reading up, I guess he had a couple heart attacks following that, had been basically in intensive care, had been on life support, and it had just gotten to the point where finally Hall's family and all his closest friends made the decision to go ahead and take him off of life support. He fought for a good several hours in traditional Scott Hall fashion after he was taken off of life support, but unfortunately the inevitable did come, and it was, of course, major news for anybody that followed wrestling during the time that Scott Hall was active. As mentioned, of course, many long years under the alias of the bad guy, Razor Ramon, who, of course, that's obviously the inspiration that Bossman and I got to dub Ramon Laureano Razor Ramon, because when Laureano came up, he kind of did resemble how Razor Ramon looked, early on in his WWF career. Won the Intercontinental Champion, which was amongst the highlights several times, if I remember correctly. Had a pretty decently long career in the WWF. Ultimately, when that came to an end, we all remember how he randomly appeared on WCW Monday Nitro one night in the middle of a match that was going on at that point in time. Of course, not long after that's when Scott Hall joined him over there in the WCW, and they tag teamed as the Outsiders. That, of course, inevitably led to the foundation of the NWO, along with Hollywood Hulk Hogan and, many different incarnations of that during its time over there in WCW. And they just, of course, wreaked havoc as that stable in the years that was going on. The I guess OG NWO of Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hollywood Hulk Hogan briefly, of course, made a comeback for about little less than or over a year. It was not too long after, of course, WWF had bought the rights to WCW. You had that whole little war going down that was scripted out between WWF, WCW, and ECW that the WWF ultimately won. Vince, as part of a storyline, brought the NWO in because he thought the WWF, I guess, was going to hell and was going to kill it with the NWO. Again, that kind of played out for about, 6 months to a year, and then the group kind of really broke up and had rotating individuals in it after, of course, Hulk Hogan and The Rock had their match at WrestleMania that year. With the stable ultimately getting broken up, not relatively too long after that, and, of course, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash briefly wrestled around solely in the WWF after that. But, as far as being actively on the wrestling ring, Scott pretty much finished off his wrestling career doing gigs at various indies around the country and around the world until it obviously got to the point that he just physically couldn't do it anymore. And just a gentleman that was the man of the people. I'm pretty sure everybody remembers that picture taken of him just chilling in Sri Lanka, and the fact that he was just able to walk out of there with all those golden chains around his neck and not get his ass whooped because of, who he was and how he carried himself. And just, him and Kevin Nash, of course, was it Casey Pratt pointed it out not too long after Scott passed away, that Scott and Kevin were actually very fundamental in setting up the way that a lot of these whose contracts are now in wrestling. They were amongst the first to try to, obviously seek out fair quality pay for individuals that took part in, wrestling or professional sports entertainment or whatever the bloody hell you want to call it at this point in time. So Scott was at the forefront of that, and just very unfortunate news as a longtime wrestling fan myself, who loosely got to watch Scott over the years, whether if it was as Razor Ramon during his early time in the WWF, some of the brief stuff with the Outsiders and the NWO during the WCW time, and of course that brief time that the NWO was back in the WW when the NWO was in the WWF after all that stuff that I mentioned earlier. But just, tragic loss for the wrestling community, and obviously an individual that, for those of you that know me here at the show, obviously very familiar with Boss Man, and of course Dan Wolfe. Yes, we know it's been a long time since Dan has been on the show because of his work schedule with Southwest kind of conflicting with him being able to be on the show as regularly as he used to be. But, both of them obviously, if you missed it, put out, posts that day expressing their condolences because both of them grew up watching Scott Hall when he was wreaking havoc as the bad guy early in his wrestling career. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join us here at AsFANRAdio in a moment of silence for the late Scott Hall. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead and get on into things here tonight, as, of course, we will begin the programming here on tonight's show with discussing, obviously, some of the latest developments that have gone down in the, it seems like, forever ongoing quest to get a new ballpark built for the Oakland Athletics. Current location, of course, still being Howard Terminal. Nothing's changed. No, they're not going to try to build something to the Coliseum. No, another site has somehow not just magically popped up. It is still Howard Terminal, or these guys are going to be bouncing out of Oakland if everything falls apart with this project. As many of you, of course, know, the next big, I guess, hurdle or big binding vote that's needed for this project to go forward. Otherwise, if it doesn't happen, then it's pretty much DOA at that point. Goes down on June 2nd, of course, that's when the San Francisco BCDC will be having their binding vote on if the project should happen or not. Recently, of course, they had the SPAC meeting where basically the Seaport which stands for Seaport Advisory Committee, for those of you that don't know, they had a little committee meeting that went down back on, I believe it was, just trying to get my dates back up here as I'm kind of looking back through things. It was just a little over a week ago. I want to say around the 19th, maybe, or maybe not necessarily. It was last week. It was sometime between, I want to say it was actually Tuesday or last Wednesday that this meeting ended up going down. Just, so much going down that just, days and weeks and hours sometimes run into each other now, it seems like, which is kind of, been the case with a lot of us that have been through this pandemic. But anyway, of course, the SPAC committee meeting going down just a little over a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. But ultimately, this group of individuals met. You obviously had the A's and the Port at this meeting presenting their cases for why the whole Port, ties to the ballpark project should be removed, or why the Port recommendation for Port use of Howard Terminal should be removed. Port hasn't used it since 2012. They see no further use for it as far as maritime operations in the upcoming future. It's basically just been used for storage, parking for trucks, and training for some of the various entities that are involved on the around the port there. You obviously got the opposition out there that continues to push that it's still going to be needed for maritime use, even though the port's made it pretty clear it's not. They're of course still pushing all the various lies and misinformation out there about how this isn't a this is going to be a publicly financed project when it's not. It's a privately financed project. All the typical usual BS, misinformation, lies that who's been feeding that to folks, trying to feed the folks out there over the last several months. And obviously there were some concerns specifically in regards to one David Lewis, who sits on that committee, who of course has been making a big anti-Howard Terminal fuss from the get-go with this project, which is kind of funny given that Mr. Lewis supports the Mission Rock project that the Giants are getting ready to build right across from where Oracle Park is over there in San Francisco. Hey, David, if you haven't realized it by now, what the Giants are doing with Mission Rock and what the A's want to do with Howard Terminal are basically the same damn project, dude. And if you're not going to support what the A's are going to do, but you support what the Giants are wanting to do over there, you're a goddamn hypocrite, pure and simple. Basically, the SPAC committee decided to recommend not to lift the seaport regulations from there, which obviously, has pissed a lot of people off. A's got a little bit annoyed with it. You can look at it as maybe a setback or a hiccup. My eyes, some people's eyes, it doesn't really amount to much of anything because it's a committee. It's not the final binding vote. What matters is that final binding vote that goes down at the main BCDC meeting in June. Now, of course, you got some out there who are worried that this recommendation is ultimately going to lead to that being the final say. But, big thing the boss has pointed out, obviously, that one of the big heavy hitters that's on the BCDC, in fact, it might be the individual that runs the BCDC, happens to be a former A's lawyer who's been very highly vocal and supportive of the entire Howard Terminal project. You have whispers going around that, maybe, and I guess this is the one time where we can be happy, I guess, in regards to, I can't even believe I'm saying this, happy in regards to something regarding John Fisher. God, I can't believe I'm actually saying that. But whispers are supposedly because of John Fisher's, wealth and influence to who knows what degree in San Francisco that he might be able to pull some of these yoo-hoos to back this project. That's just obviously some of the little tidbits that, we're hearing from out there. A lot of indications are still, pointing towards base of a lot of the stuff we're pulling off of the underground is that it should still end up being a yes binding vote, regardless of what direction it pulls itself into. Now, obviously, there's going to be another committee meeting involving, a committee tied to the BCDC coming up later next month. I'll obviously try to have some more details on that when we come at you for the next edition of the show next week. But first week of April, sometime, I want to say, when that committee meeting goes down and they give their input on stuff. But again, ultimately everything ties around to when that main vote goes down. So, it is what it is, what these committees say. In the end of things, the bigger scheme of things, all that really matters is that final vote. But I will definitely say, maybe, in regards to some individuals out there, because one big thing that's being pointed out is, and I definitely encourage this, is folks need to definitely start reaching out to and emailing all those various members on the BCDC board. I know Bossman's compiling a list. I'll have to check with him on that, on making sure we get that list together and getting it out on Facebook and Twitter, so that way folks could have it. But obviously, those of you out there that are already familiar with that list already know who to contact at the BCDC. Get on top of that. Start doing that, and start voicing your support about the project. Don't be an asshole. Don't be all up in their faces. Just tactfully and respectfully get the point across on why the BCDC needs to vote yes on a binding agreement on June 2nd for this. And obviously, as well, if there's any notice of any individuals out there who are hating on this that have involvement in that vote but show any signs of obviously supporting similar stuff in San Francisco, then maybe start looking into bringing up some of the possible conflicts of interest that are involved with things to the BCDC. But one thing I definitely want to say this, and it was best put by Hal the Hot Dog economist, is the BCDC was established to make sure that, things were properly handled with construction on the waterfront around the Bay Area. They were not put in place to purposely derail projects just because certain individuals don't like what is going on with them, but yet they are supporting similar projects elsewhere. Maybe not exactly in those words or contexts as how Hal put it, but you get my drift, y'all. Basically this group needs to be looking at, what's going on with this project and voting, the proper and correct way with this, and not just being, voting no on it because they're biased and they don't like the East Bay, which, stuff like what David Lewis pulled, ladies and gentlemen. That's why a lot of us still to this day continue to think that San Francisco has a bias against not just Oakland, but the East Bay. Folks want to talk about that doesn't happen, but then you have individuals like this Save the Bay knucklehead who pulls crap like that makes us think and point out, you sure that there's not a bias from that town across the bay? You may want to rethink that. Obviously, some of the other stuff that's been going on as well is Councilmember Carol Fife had a town hall meeting a couple of weeks ago. She's going to have another one that's going down tomorrow that we've shared information about over on our Facebook and Twitter pages, so go and check it out there. People pointing out that this last town hall that she had was not very highly publicized or promoted. It was under-promoted, some feel. She only put out one post on Facebook about the last town hall meeting she had, something like 3 or 4 days before the meeting, then put out another promotion about it literally like hours beforehand on Twitter. There was less than 75 people at that town hall meeting. Forgot if it was on Zoom or if she had it public somewhere. My assumption is probably still doing it on Zoom because of stuff with the pandemic, and that it really had, as far as like views and likes on YouTube after that was all said and done, at the time this individual mentioned all this stuff, there were only like 6 views and 1 like of this video. And obviously the big issue that a lot of the supporters of Howard Terminal are taking with Carol Fife right now is what seems to be just a complete lack of understanding on this. She's sitting there talking about how, the A's aren't communicating with me, the city's not communicating with me, I'm feeling completely disrespected, that my, voice is not being heard in my district. Carol, you got supporters up the butt in that district that back this project. Biggest one you can talk to is our boy Bleacher Dave. Recent polls conducted show that the majority of people in your district, little over or under 23,000, support the project. Yeah, less than 75% at your last town hall meeting is not a proper representation of that 23,000, but put it that way. And most of the people at that town hall meeting apparently were opponents of the stadium, but again, go figure, when it's under promoted, you don't really get that fair of a turnout. So, it's just, some people, including Bossman, have been looking at what she's been doing lately as, maybe some form of political grandstanding because of, waiting to see what's going on with the CBA. I don't know what to make of it anymore at this point. I don't know if she is still conducting political grandstanding or if it's just, unfortunately, another one of those situations where maybe this is just yet again another political activist that should not have gotten into politics. Wouldn't be the first one. Unfortunately, there's at least one other one on that council that some of us look at that way, being Noelle Gallo. And if she was popping off about, Noelle wanting to put something out there for more studies to be done, something that the city obviously put off on the later to-do list or whatever yesterday when that was proposed. But just like a lot of this information has been out there for months, and the reality is some of these questions tied to this can't be answered until that collective bargaining agreement for the housing stuff is agreed on between the A's and the city. So, maybe there's some extent and legitimacy to what's going on with Carol, but I just, I don't know. From where I'm standing at and sitting at, I just see an individual who has all the tools at her possession to look this stuff up, and it's just she keeps acting like she doesn't know what's going on. And also she wants to try to put a ballot measure for this project on the ballot in November, which is stupid and idiotic. This is something that the city council, not the populace, needs to be voting on. Because especially, given how much of the misinformation we're seeing going around out there, I got called an asshole today for bringing up that somebody on Facebook was sharing misinformation about the ballpark. Yeah, pointed out they were spreading misinformation, put the correct information about the ballpark. I get called an asshole because I'm putting the truth out there. Go figure. It's stuff like that proves that, the public can't be relied on to properly vote on this, even with a whole bunch of us out there trying to get the information out there. And again, the reality is this is a privately financed project, no matter what way the opposition tries to cut it, slash it, whatever. They're trying to make you think otherwise. It's a privately financed project. And for those of you that are complaining about, why should we have to pay, the city should pay for the infrastructure? Because that's how it is. You look up any of these other stadium projects, you're going to see the city paid for the infrastructure on those projects, regardless if they were privately financed, mixed privately public, or if the stadiums were fully publicly financed. The cities took care of that infrastructure. That's just how it works. Cities are supposed to take care of their infrastructure money. I guess some meeting that Carol had going on last night, Tosh Tasimobi, who's part of the A's front office, was talking at it, and Carol, I guess, brought up something along the lines about why should we be the ones paying for an infrastructure and da-da-da-da-da, and Taj, said something along the lines of, it's not the A's responsibility to pay to repair potholes, and Taj is right, whether you like that or not. It's not the A's responsibility to pay for infrastructure upgrades down there. That's the city's, and the reality is infrastructure upgrades are needed in that area, regardless if a ballpark is built or not, people. So just bottom line, it will get done quicker with that project going down there. So just, again, I don't know what to make of this situation with Fife. Hopefully when we come at y'all next week, Boss is able to join us, and Boss can share with you his take on what's going on with, possibly with why she's doing things the way she is. And we'll obviously have a little bit more to go and talk about in regards to what happens with this little town hall that she's having going on tomorrow, which, again, information in regards to that town meeting that Councilmember Carol Fife is hosting. We have that info shared up on our Facebook page and our Twitter page, courtesy of both Vitamin D and another individual who goes by Ole Chapman something or another. My bad, y'all. Again, it's been a long day. This is the second show I've done today, and, just trying to obviously stay awake here. So if I forget names of individuals who share information, my bad, sorry. But bottom line is the info is up on our Facebook page and our Twitter page for you to check out. My opinion is it probably would be smarter to have just mainly District 3 supporters chime in on that. I mean, would it be great to have a whole bunch of supporters, regardless of their District 3, go on there? Yeah, sure, why not? But at the same time, I don't want to see that town hall completely get overflowed with non-District 3 members, and then that just gives Carol Fife a reason to bitch and moan about something else. So definitely go and check that out. Obviously, for sure, going to encourage y'all to check out and be a part of that town hall meeting. If you're from D3, if you want to chime in, if you're not from D3, great. But again, let's try not to completely overblow it. And regardless of how you all feel with how Carol Fife's been doing stuff, be professional. Get your point across in a professional and tactful way. Don't be a jackass. Otherwise, that's just going to do nothing but hurt the cause and, give Carol a reason to be pissed off for some other reason or another. That's it as far as things go on the Howard Terminal front for now. We'll obviously keep you all posted on stuff through social media between now and the next show if anything comes down. Otherwise, of course, if anything else does go down between now and next Thursday, we'll update you on things on the show if we end up not posting about that stuff on our social media pages. There is a fan question of the night out there for this edition of the show, and obviously given the fact of how things have begun with this spring in regards to what many of us foresaw happening with this spring, I decided to make things a little bit different with this fan question of the night for this edition of the show. So go ahead and between now and at any point between now and the end of tonight's broadcast, make your way over to either facebook.com/AsFAnRadio or at A's_fan_radio over on Twitter, and submit your response for the fan question of the night for this edition of the show. As always, I read y'all's responses to the fan question of the night near the end of the show's broadcast. And like I said, it's not even we're switching it up tonight. It's not even a baseball-related question. Hell, it's not even an Howard Terminal-related question for this show. Since tonight's broadcast happens to be dedicated to the late Scott Hall, the fan question tonight is, we want to hear some of your thoughts on the late Scott Hall, regardless if it's some memory of when you watched Scott wrestle, regardless if it was on TV or in person, some other memory that you have of Scott Hall, just whatever it is. Tonight's fan question is, we want to hear your thoughts on the late Scott Hall. So again, either facebook.com/AsFAnRadio or at A's_fan_radio on Twitter. Look for the post that says fan question of the night. Click on the link right there. It will take you to the original fan question of the night post that I put up at some point earlier in the day before we did the bear raid way many moons ago, it seems like, even though it was 6-7 hours ago. Put your responses up. I will read them, of course, during the final segment of tonight's show. We come back, we'll go ahead and take a look at what the CBA looks like heading into the upcoming season. And, of course, you already know, unfortunately, that I'm going to have to talk about the roster getting blown up yet again for your Oakland Athletics. That and a lot more coming at you as we continue on down the road here tonight on show number 203, the spring training editions of AsFAnRadio. And, of course, if you forgot, tonight's edition of the show is dedicated to the late Scott Hall.
Hey, everybody. Yep, it's me. You haven't heard from me in a long time. It's Tally, motherfuckers. You listening to your number one source for everything and anything on your Oakland Athletics, AsFAnRadio. Don't forget to bring a towel, fire up that medical research, and let's get high.
Man, it's been a hot minute since we've heard you or any of the other random voiceovers that I like to pull out of my butt sometimes around this show. Yeah, I figured maybe it was overdue to bring one of those voiceovers out. Probably will make it be the only one, though, of the night. Got to get the vocal cords back up and tuned up if I'm going to be doing that stuff coming out of breaks on future shows. Welcome back, everybody. It is show number 302, the spring training editions of your number one source for everything and anything on your Oakland Athletics. A's Talk from the fans' point of view since 2003. And, of course, tonight's edition of the show being dedicated to the late, great Scott Hall. Welcome back to A's Fan Radio. It is the legally 5150 Corporal Oaktown hosting solo for the second time today as part of show number 2 of a two-show broadcast doubleheader that we've done throughout the course of the day on twitch.tv/AsFAnRadio. If you missed out on it earlier today around 1 o'clock, we did show number 16 of the Bear Raid presented by Tightwad Hill after putting that off for nearly 2 months. As, of course, a lot of that had to do with me, obviously, following the lockout situation, stuff with Howard Terminal, other things going on in my life, and also trying to keep the schedule open for Donnie, Tito, and Taddy to link up and do the Bear Raid, obviously, with me. But, you know, after a while, it was just like, you know what, it's been almost 2 months, got to get that out of the way. And then I finally figured yesterday, hey, you know what, it's been a while since we've done, 2 shows in one day. Last time we did it was back when we did one of those super shows with Raider Fan Radio. It seems like, a century ago, even though it was probably, about 5, 6 7 years ago or something like that. But decided, what the hell? We haven't done a 2-show in one day broadcast, so let's go ahead and do it. Just the one advantage of having the Bear Raid and A's Fan Radio team up for the first time ever is instead of only having a 15-minute break between shows like we normally did, it was nice to have a little 6+ hour break in between those broadcasts. So, yeah, the 16th edition of the Bear Raid happened earlier today, and, of course, right here, right now on twitch.tv/AsFAnRadio, it's the flagship podcast of the Twitch channel, which is, of course, A's Fan Radio. Let's go ahead and continue on down the road here with things in the first half of tonight's broadcast. As, of course, mentioned, we're going to go ahead and touch basis on what things are looking like as far as the new labor agreement as I accidentally sorry about that, I accidentally yanked my headphones out of my ear randomly there. What things are looking like as far as the CBA that's in place now between Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association. Obviously, if somehow up until today you've been under a rock and not paying attention to things, which don't see how you could have been at this point, but could be understandable given that what I'll be talking about after this was on the horizon, what things were done and over with. The MLB lockout is over. Duh. We obviously knew that already by now. But again, you never know. Somebody could have been off camping during this whole time, and you're just now finding out all this smack as you come back. It took more than 3 months and multiple deadlines for delaying the regular season before Major League Baseball and the MLB Players Association ended their stalemate and came to terms on a new collective bargaining agreement back on March the 10th. So how did finally reaching a deal go down? When can free agents start signing again? Obviously, that's already ended up going into place. But again, I'm reading stuff that's from a few weeks ago. When will players report to camp? That obviously already happened. In the end, what did all this mess mean anyway? We're about to take a look into that right now. What changed to allow the sides to come together on a deal? Urgency created movement. The union did not panic when the league created a deadline on February 28th. A week and a half later, it ended up with both a better offer and increased urgency as the calendar pages fell away, and there would be a point where playing 162 games and getting paid for it would be in real jeopardy. It turns out that this was what was needed after months of stalled negotiations. The union's calmness in the face of the deadline proved fruitful. What to know and what's next? Opening day, of course, for those of you that don't know, was moved to April 7th. And, of course, there'll be a full 162 games played. The Oakland Athletics, of course, will begin the season on April 8th with a road series in Philadelphia. Spring training camps open with the March 11th voluntary report date and March 13th mandatory date. Those dates have obviously already passed. Spring training games, of course, started on March 17th. As mentioned, we got several that we'll be recapping here for your Oakland Athletics before the first half of the show is over with. Free agency to begin immediately once the CBA was ratified. Playoffs expanded to 12 teams. That will begin this season. The National League will officially adopt the designated hitter starting this year, and the CBT expected to begin at $230 million. That's the collective bargaining threshold, or basically, the unofficial, high, quote-unquote cap that teams can exceed before they start getting penalized for going over that, and can grow to $244 million. Takeaways from this. What is the biggest change for the sport in the new CBA? Let's not overthink this. The biggest change is 2 additional playoff teams, meaning 12 of the 30 teams will reach the postseason. The owners didn't get the 14-team format they desired, but this is still a 50% increase in playoff teams from 2011. What does it mean? It has historically been difficult to make the MLB playoffs, but the importance of the regular season continues to diminish as baseball draws closer to the 16-team brackets of the NBA and NHL. What we don't know is whether it will lead to more spending. Unfortunately, in the A's case, that seems to not to be the case. But again, we'll be getting to more of that here in a brief time once we get through all this stuff. Anyway, the players say no, but perhaps an easier trek to the postseason will lead to less tanking and a little more spending from teams chasing those extra playoff berths. Unless you're the A's, we're going to have to see in regards to that. What are you most surprised didn't change? Surprised there weren't more anti-taking measures instituted. A draft lottery is a good start, but is really enough to curb the cycles of losing we've seen in both in small and big markets. One agent liked the idea of a salary floor. That's something myself and many others pushed for because that would actually have forced John Fisher and other tightwad owners like John Fisher to actually spend some money. It was a suggestion that was floated by the league early on, but with CBT-style penalties for going under it as well as continued penalties for going over it, forcing teams to spend instead of incentivizing them would have been a better solution. What side made out better? Do both sides have reasons to be happy? The owners got an expanded postseason format, preserved the basic economic structures that loomed over the past couple of CBAs, and have more leeway to change the on-the-field rules. In other words, the owners won. Sure, the players received a couple of mechanisms to get more money to younger players. The tweaking of the CBT levels and penalties might loosen up some of the top-end spending. If the deal on the international draft comes together and disqualifying offers are removed, that's good for high-end free agency. And maybe the new draft lottery will help boost mid-level free agency if it's a result in fewer teams entering full-scale rebuilds. Probably not. Still, the gains for the MLB Players Association seem modest, and anything resembling the status quo is good for the owners. If the MLB Players Association's bottom line goal was to increase the players' aggregated share of a revenue pie that is likely to keep growing, then it's not clear this agreement furthers that goal. Will fans forget this whole mess by opening day, or will there be lingering resentment? Maybe some out there are being optimistic, but spring training will be unlike any we've ever seen. Camps will be underway while big-name free agents are signing and major trades are getting worked out. We'll be getting to that as far as things with the A's went, again, here in a bit. When opening day arrives, Fernando Tatis Jr., Shohei Ohtani, and Juan Soto will captivate us once again. The All-Star Game will come to a newly renovated Dodger Stadium. The postseason field will be bigger than ever, and in the midst of that, new rules will be implemented or at least proposed to quicken the pace of play. All the selfishness and the pettiness of these negotiations will be forgotten quickly because too much else will be going on. That's why getting this deal done now and salvaging a full season, even with opening day pushed about a week back, was so important. What does the CBA mean for CBA negotiations going forward? The new CBA is in place, but just like after the previous agreements were forged in 2016, you can already see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Lingering playing anger is inevitable amongst the middle class within the union because there is almost nothing in this deal in place to prop up that group, and it's going to get crushed in the next few weeks, in the next few years. The middle class takes the biggest hit from the practice of tanking because teams pocket money rather than spending. Biggest guilty party of that, of course, the Oakland A's. Little was done to deter teams from tanking beyond the misdemeanor cost tied to a draft lottery. As it stands, the current system will reward the elite players. The best of the young players will get more money from the bonus pool, and the best of the older players will continue to get the bigger deals. But none of that ensures small market and mid-market teams will spend, and with the best of the youngest players now becoming more expensive, teams will be more aggressively in non-tender arbitrational will be more aggressive in non-tendering arbitrational eligible players. This will only further increase the free agent pool, fueling the supply and demand problem that has gutted spending in the middle class. Historically, it's the owners who have had a haves versus haves not problem. Moving forward, factions within the union will have a similar fight, including discussions about whether the best interests of all the players are served by having so many members of the leadership group represented by one agent. In this round of negotiations, Scott Boris's clients made up the majority of the players making the big decisions, and we saw a hint of potential disclosure to come reflective in the final vote. Although the 8-person executive committee voted down the deal unanimously, the player reps voted for it, 26-4. Players and agents can look to change that dynamic in the years ahead to push for the high volume of union members who compromise the rank and file. So obviously, that's some of the stuff that we have to look forward to as far as the CBA. Some of the other stuff, obviously, that involves some of those changes to rules that can be done basically pretty much whenever the league and the owners decide to. We're unfortunately going to see the return of the ghost runner in extra innings, or the extra runner. I like to call it the trust fund baby runner at this point. The bottom line, the runner on second in extra innings, unfortunately, will be returning in 2022 after we were all told it was going away. Why they brought this back, I don't bloody hell know. But on the good side, at least 9-inning doubleheaders are back because obviously there are going to be some doubleheaders that have been scheduled into the 162-game schedule because of that week or so that was lost as a result of when the lockout was going on. I know a lot of people are making a fuss about the 12-team format, and we're making an even bigger fuss about the 14-team player format. The argument that Boss and I have always presented to everybody in regards to that, and this is still my take, and I'm pretty sure his take on things, people, once the A's and the Rays stadium situations are handled, it is inevitable that Major League Baseball is going to expand. So the most logical thing I can think of is, with the owners knowing that's on the horizon, why wait around for that to happen, I guess, and expand the playoffs now? We'll have to ultimately see if they, in time, get their wish of 14 teams or not. And obviously, when the time comes that the league does expand, will we ultimately see kind of a 16-team playoff bracket like the NBA and the NHL has? It's still kind of, I guess maybe split down the middle, maybe not necessarily split down the middle. From what I see and people I interact with, it's split down the middle in regards to the whole thing with the playoff format. I think it's good for baseball. I think it's going to cause a lot more people to be more interested in following the postseason games, regardless if their teams are in the hunt or not. But, again, I'm not going to sit there and hate on it because, like I said, I know that inevitably baseball wants to expand. So it's kind of understandable why they want to do that. Another thing that'll be in place this year is what's basically being referred to as the Shohei Ohtani rule, which is if you have a situation like where let's say it's the Angels playing and Shohei Ohtani's pitching, and they decide to bat him in the lineup. Obviously, as we all know, both leagues have the designated hitter in place now. Well, let's say Shohei goes 5-6 innings. They pull him out of the game from pitching. He can remain in the lineup as the designated hitter even after he's been pulled out as a starter. Now, there might be, I don't know what teams out there are going to utilize this. The only other team that I know of off the top of my head where I could see them maybe utilizing something like this would be the Diamondbacks with Madison Bumgarner, potentially. But, that really all depends on if Mad Bum's able to regain any of his former form or not. But just, the one that sticks out obviously the most that for sure this rule is going to be applied to the most is going to be obviously Shohei Ohtani. And we'll have to see, obviously, as time goes on, if we obviously see any more of these two-way athletes coming into baseball, that this rule will probably apply to them as well. The big thing that Boss and I are looking forward to that's not going to be a part of things this year, but will be implemented as early as next season is something that I've wanted to see for a long time and something Boss has wanted to see for a long time, and that is the fact that in 2023, every Major League Baseball team will play at least one series against each other. It's about damn time. It's overdue, long freaking overdue. I think that's one of the things they should have done back in the late 90s, early 2000s after the whole interleague play was tossed in there. Probably another idea that folks aren't very fond of, but, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I don't care if y'all hate on that or not. I like that idea. I welcome it. It's overdue for baseball to have that. So, yeah, that's pretty much what things are looking like as far as things with the CBA. Unfortunately, it led to what many of us already knew was inevitably going to happen as a result of that CBA, and that was, of course, the inevitable once every 5 to 6 year blowing up of the Oakland Athletics roster because, again, as expected, $3 billion net worth owner John Fisher is being a tightwad, not spending any money. Up until they signed Stephen Vogt the other day, the A's had not spent anything. Zero, nada, squat on free agency. I'd spent more on groceries in the last 2 months than the A's had spent on free agency before they brought Stephen Vogt over. But, again, as we expected, sadly, Boss and I saw it coming, before the lockout happened. Many of you out there saw it coming as well, and were already braced and ready for it. Others out there probably saw it coming as well, but still were shocked by it. And, again, as mentioned, a fire sale that kind of basically started really not too long after the CBA was approved. In fact, many of us were over at Rockies over there at Brooklyn Basin partaking in the Oakland 68's fan-produced Fans Fest when, of course, the news had dropped, was broken that Chris Bassett had been dealt to the Mets. A couple days go by, the next one that we knew that was going to end up going down, Matt Olson gets dealt off to the Atlanta Braves for several prospects. Another one that, of course, we knew was going to ultimately happen, there was part of me that maybe figured, hey, maybe this one actually won't go down until later in the year because of the fact that he's coming off of a hip injury. He's not hitting the way he used to. He looks like complete, utter butt at the plate, almost a second coming of Eric Chavez, I guess to some extent on the offensive side, but they still, somehow, some way, Blue Jays found a way to pry Matt Chapman away. Olson, by the way, ended up signing a big, huge extension with the Atlanta Braves. I believe it was like a 6 to 8 year extension. Basically a contract that's going to probably lock him in Atlanta through the end of his playing career. And, can't get mad on him, can't get hate on him. The dude's from Atlanta. He's getting the opportunity to play for his hometown team. Can't get mad at that. There's somebody that many years ago when he wanted to play professional baseball had dreamt of, playing for the Oakland A's, though if I was still playing now, I don't know if I'd want to play for them with the way the organization's being ran at this point. Chapman also signed a 2-year extension with Toronto, so looking, I guess, to maybe milk a quick little 2 years up there before he tries to test free agency. And we're still waiting for the shoe to fall on a couple other individuals. Obviously, it was announced that Sean Manaea, Frankie Montas, and Ramon Laureano all got arbitration contracts offered to them, as did Lou Trevino. But Montas and Manaea are guys that are being linked to potential trade talks. It seems like they kind of, the A's want to hold on to Frankie a little bit longer and are more willing to part with Manaea at this point. Frankie, I would, trying to play some sort of devil's advocate here, I guess you can say. Frankie would probably be the one that would net you a little bit of a higher value because let's be real, regardless of how much some of us out here love Sean Manaea, he's kind of been, not up to his full potential the last year or so. So I'm, kind of actually shocked that there is some interest out there. But both Montas and Manaea are gaining interest. Lariano's been gaining interest too, though obviously if he's picked up by anybody, they're still going to have to deal with him serving the rest of that 80-game suspension for him popping for PEDs, unfortunately, last year. Basically the same situation that happened to Sterling Marte back when he was still down in Miami a couple years ago. But just, very frustrating when you look at a team that's owned by a guy that is amongst the top 10 net worth owners in his sport regularly. Literally should be right there spending with the likes of the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, that pumpkin-colored team across the bay. No. You're worth $3 billion and you want to be a bottom feeder. I'm just a loss for words at this point. It's completely understandable why many of you out there have, thrown your hands up and are just like, screwed at this point. I've never really have been an advocate, and you've all heard me say it before, I've never been an advocate of folks boycotting games or not going out to games because of being fed up with this stuff, because I always felt like it would feed into the whole relocation talks. But after the last couple of years of this, I don't blame people for not wanting to go or not wanting to renew their season tickets or limiting to just buying tickets the day of game if they end up going at all. It's completely understandable, But, however, at the same time, I also got to make sure to stress that as much as this, pisses us all off, you at the same time have to remember that if, like many of us, you foresaw this coming, let's be real. What's going to happen with this team on the field in 2022? And let's just be frank, this team's probably going to be complete, utter donkey ass in 2022. I might be putting it mildly nice at this point. Yeah, we'll go with utter donkey ass for your 2022 Oakland Athletics at this point. Really, right now, what happens on the field doesn't matter in 2022. And I say that because ultimately, at the end of the day, if the Howard Terminal project cannot be finalized, we're not going to have a team to cheer on or bitch and moan about because they'll be gone if Howard Terminal doesn't happen. So, yeah, it sucks that we're seeing this happen yet again, but I guess if you want to see some sort of light at the end of the tunnel in regards to this, let's not worry about the on-the-field shit in 2022. Let's focus on what we have to do on our end to help make sure Howard Terminal becomes a reality. But, yeah, just be prepared, unfortunately, for what's going to be a garbage-ass 2022 season, most likely, for your Oakland Athletics. Reminder that there is a fan question of the night for this edition of the show, so make your way over to Facebook.com/AsFAnRadio or at A's_fan_radio on Twitter right now if you haven't had a chance yet to do so. And look for the post that says Fan Question of the Night. Click on that link. It will take you to the original post that went up earlier in the day. Submit your response, and, of course, yours truly will read your responses at the end of tonight's broadcast. Once again, the fan question for this edition of the show, since the show happens to be dedicated to Scott Hall, we want to hear some of your thoughts on the late Scott Hall. So again, to submit that response, either Facebook.com/AsFAnRadio or at A's_fan_radio over on Twitter. Click on the post that says Fan Question of the Night. Click on the link, submit your response, and again, I will read off your thoughts on the late Scott Hall during the final segment of tonight's show. We come back to close out things here in the first half of show number 302 of AFR. We're going to finally recap some spring training games. Yeah, I know I just got over talking about how this is going to be a donkey-ass season for the A's, but hey, still, it is A's Fan Radio nonetheless. We still got to obviously recap game action regardless of what's going on. So we will recap the first week's worth of spring training action before we close out things on the first half of tonight's show and head on, of course, to the infamous X-rated second half of the broadcast. Don't go anywhere. Show number 302, the spring training editions of A's Fan Radio, this one, of course, being dedicated to the late Scott Hall, will be right back at you following this break. Oh, great. It's the Winter Soldier. Yeah, I kind of figured that I wouldn't be able to impersonate Sonic the Hedgehog. I just wanted an excuse to say that line. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, as we get ready to close out the first half of tonight's edition of your number one source for everything and anything on your Oakland Athletics. It is show number 203, and it is a spring training edition of AsFAnRAdio. Tonight's broadcast, of course, dedicated to the late great wrestling legend known as Scott Hall. It is, of course, the legally 5150 Corporal Oaktown coming at you solo for this edition of AFR, and has been solo on both of the show broadcasts that have gone down on the Twitch channel today. We, of course, had show number 16 of the Bear Raid broadcast earlier in the afternoon today, and, of course, right here, right now, it's the flagship broadcast of this Twitch channel, the longevity, going on 19 years old soon to be, AFR. As mentioned, to close out things here in the first half of tonight's show, we're going to go ahead and take a look at some spring training action for your Oakland Athletics, with, of course, the spring training schedule beginning on Thursday, March the 17th, as obviously a lot of the early games got canceled out and washed away with the lockout still going on. Obviously, when they were able to salvage things, they were able to put out kind of an abbreviated spring training schedule, I guess you could say, to be able to still get in a bunch of games between the 17th and before the actual regular season gets set and underway on April the 7th. So we will go ahead now, and like I said, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the games that the A's have played since spring training started last week. That will, of course, cover games from the 18th of last week up until today's game action against the Brewers. And then when we come back at you later on here for the infamous X-rated second half of the show broadcast, that's when we'll go ahead and preview the upcoming week's worth of spring training games between now and when we come at you for the next edition of the show next week. On that note, as mentioned, let's go ahead and take a look at the games that have gone down since spring training got underway last week. And we, of course, begin with the first game of the spring for your Oakland Athletics. They opened up the 2022 spring training schedule in the Cactus League at home at Hohokam Stadium down there in Mesa, Arizona, hosting a longtime AL West divisional rival. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, they kicked off the 2022 spring training season against a team that claims it's from Los Angeles, but we all know better otherwise. And for those of you that have followed this show for many, many years, already know this. If not, then you're about to find out right now. Bossman and I, we do not call them the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. We don't even just call them the LA Angels, because they don't play in Los Angeles. They don't even play in LA County. They play in Orange County. They are still, in our eyes, the Anaheim Angels. So yeah, if you didn't know, now you know. We still call them Anaheim here on this show. So here's what went down back on Friday, April the 18th, in the first spring game of 2022 down in the Cactus League between the Anaheim Angels and your Oakland Athletics. The Angels would get on the board first in that contest last Friday when they would score the first 2 runs of the game in the top of the first inning. They would score 1 run in the top of the third and 2 more runs in the top of the fourth before our beloved green and gold would finally get on the board in the bottom of the fourth inning with a 3-run spot. Both teams would each score single runs in the 5th inning, with the Angels scoring what would be their final 2 runs of the contest in the top of the 6th. From the bottom of the 6th on, it would be green and gold the rest of the way out, as the A's would score 1 run in the bottom of the 6th, 2 runs in the bottom of the 7th, and their final 3 runs of the game in the bottom of the 8th, as they would go on to win their spring training debut. Let me start over again. Go on to win their first game of the spring, as the A's down the Angels in the first Cactus League game of the year for them, winning by the final of 10-8. Oakland 10 runs, 12 hits, no errors. Anaheim 8 hits, 15 hits, and no errors across 9 innings in that contest last Sunday afternoon out in the Arizona desert. Penn Mantell picked up the win for the A's, improving to 1-0 on the spring. Smith taking the loss for the Angels. He falls to 0-1 on the spring. And Brown, not Seth Brown, guy who has AA in the first name, probably one of those non-roster invitees, or probably one of the minor league guys, most likely is my guess. He picked up the save for the A's in this one, his first save of the spring. Looking at things on the batting side, home runs in this one. Over on the Angels side of things, you had Adele hit his first of the spring. Wallace hit his first of the spring as well. Over on the A's side of things, punk-ass Sky Balt was the lone ding-dong doodle for the A's in this one, that being his first homer of the spring. After that, of course, the A's would continue on things and play out their second game of the spring and their first road game of the spring, as they would head on out to play a road game against the Cincinnati Reds. We'll go ahead now and take a look at what went down in that action on the road between Cincinnati and Oakland back on Saturday. What the hell was the day? Remember, y'all, I'm dealing with doing 2 shows here, so I might have a little bit of brain fart and zone out every now and then. If I do, my apologies for that. Also, it's because just like the old days when I'm going here waiting for things, got to sit here and jibber jabber a little bit because I'm waiting on game day to load. Great. It's going to be great just having to get used to waiting on MLB game day to load to do this stuff. There we go. Here's what went down in this contest that, of course, again, was a game that went down on Saturday. God, here I go getting my days screwed up again. Saturday, March the 19th. Again, the road team being your Oakland Athletics, playing on the road at the Cincinnati Reds, as something randomly happens there as I'm just trying to pull up the box score here, and just there we go, finally. Anyway, here's what happened in this contest between the Reds and the Athletics last Saturday out in the desert. Cincinnati would blow things open early in this one. They would score a touchdown in the bottom of the first inning, drop 7 runs on your Oakland Athletics to open up things in this game. The Reds would then go on to score 1 run in the bottom of the 3rd inning before the Oakland Athletics would finally get on the board with their first run of the contest in the top of the 5th. The Reds would add on a single run of their own in the bottom half of that 5th inning. The Reds wouldn't score anything after that, but unfortunately for your A's after that, they were only able to manage 1 more run over the remainder of the game. That last run coming across in the top of the 7th inning, as the A's are handed their first L of the Cactus League season for 2022, as they fall in this one to the Cincinnati Reds by the final of 9-3. Cincinnati 9 runs, 11 hits, 2 errors. Oakland 3 runs, 6 hits, and 1 error in the contest. Mahle, M-A-H-L-E, picking up the win for Cincinnati in this one, while Sean Manaea got tagged for the loss, 0-1 to start off the spring. And again, as mentioned, probably diminished his trade value, possibly, with that start. But again, highly doubt it, because there's still, at least going into yesterday and today, there was teams that were out there putting tabs in for him. So who knows, even with that performance, maybe somehow, some way, somebody will still try to do something. Anyway, no home runs for the A's in this one. There were a whole crap load for the Reds in this one. You had Garcia hit 2 to bring his spring total to 2, and you also had Bowers hit his first spring training home run as well in this contest. Just wanted to check things. Goodyear Ballpark, by the way, was where this game took place at. Goodyear, of course, being shared by the Cincinnati Reds and the Cleveland franchise, which we'll be getting more into here in a bit on what they call themselves now, by the way, in case you haven't been paying attention to what's been going on with that. So, spring training, games don't count, win or loss, but, kind of crazy seeing the A's have a little bit of a back-and-forth battle to begin the spring, and then second game of the spring, they go out there and they get their blocks knocked off. Maybe an unfortunate preview of what's to come during 2022. Hopefully not games like that, but let's be real, folks. We might not be shocked to see some 9-3 games or worse during the 2022 season. Let's go ahead and take a look at what went down in the 3rd game of the year, the 3rd game of the spring, for your Oakland Athletics. They were back at Hohokam Stadium in Mesa, Arizona for this one that went down on Sunday, March the 20th, as Cleveland came into town. Nope, obviously they're not known as the Indians anymore. If you didn't know, now you know. They, of course, now are the Cleveland Guardians. Makes me very happy, by the way, given the fact that I'm using basically the old matchup image that we had, that for Cleveland they just have their C on there. The C's